The rain had thinned to a mist by the time Lily Carter stepped out the back door of the Aurelia, but the cold November air still cut through her apron and damp blouse. The alley was narrow and dim, lit only by the humming sign above the kitchen entrance. She leaned against the brick wall, pressing trembling fingers to her temples while Megan's voice quivered through the phone. Megan spoke in quick, apologetic bursts, explaining that the Cole family insisted Lily attend the wedding tomorrow. That wedding. The wedding of Eric Hayes and Vanessa Cole. The wedding of the man who had left Lily behind without hesitation, only to marry into a wealthier branch of her friend's family. Lily listened to every word as if through water. Her breath came shallow, her pulse fluttering. She agreed softly, without strength to argue, then hung up and stared at the wet pavement. Memories surged without mercy. Eric's promises, his sudden distance, the cold announcement that he needed someone more suitable, someone who would not embarrass him in front of his colleagues. Lily had swallowed all of it. Now she was expected to show up at his wedding and smile. A burst of laughter drifted from inside the restaurant and jolted her back. She wiped her eyes quickly and forced herself to re-enter the warm, bustling dining room. The clatter of plates and low hum of conversation wrapped around her like static. She straightened her apron and lifted her chin, searching for the one table she always managed to handle without falling apart. Nathan Blackwood sat at his usual corner table, dressed casually in a gray sweater that softened the sharp lines of his face. He was the kind of customer who noticed everything yet never intruded. As she approached, she felt his gaze flick upward, lingering just long enough to register her distress. She placed a glass of water on the table, but her hand shook slightly. Nathan asked her if she was all right. The question was gentle, almost tentative, and it loosened something inside her. She tried to give a practiced smile, but it cracked in half. The words spilled out before she could stop them. The wedding, Vanessa, the humiliation, the dread of walking into a ballroom where everyone would whisper about how far she had fallen. She heard herself confess the aching truth that she did not want to go alone, that she could not bear to be seen as the discarded past. Emboldened by despair, she looked at him with a surge of reckless clarity. Without pausing to think, she asked him to accompany her to the wedding and act as her husband for a day. No trick of phrasing, no apology. A simple request born from panic and pride, and the desire for one person in that room to look at her as if she mattered. The dining room seemed to hold its breath. Nathan studied her with a seriousness she had never seen on him before. A long moment passed, silent and heavy. Then Nathan nodded once, slow and certain, as if the decision had already been waiting inside him. He accepted. Morning crept slowly into Lily Carter's apartment, touching the walls with a pale gold that did nothing to settle the storm in her chest. She stood before the mirror, smoothing down the fabric of a navy dress she had ironed 3 times. Her reflection looked like someone preparing for battle rather than celebration. Every breath felt tight, shaky, but she forced herself to inhale deeply and counted the seconds until she could exhale without trembling. When a firm knock sounded at her door, her entire body stiffened. She expected to see Nathan Blackwood as she knew him, the quiet man in comfortable sweaters who tipped generously and listened carefully. Nothing could have prepared her for the figure waiting in the dim hallway. Nathan stood tall in a dark tailored suit that hugged his shoulders with immaculate precision. The transformation was jarring. His hair, usually tousled and soft, was styled neatly, emphasizing the strong symmetry of his face. His shoes shone with understated luxury, and on his wrist glinted a watch whose craftsmanship spoke a silent language of wealth. Lily could not speak at first. Her breath left her in an unsteady rush as her eyes traveled from the sharp cut of his suit to the calm confidence in his gaze. The man before her was not the unassuming diner regular she thought she knew. He radiated a presence that did not simply fill the narrow hallway, it commanded it. Nathan greeted her with a warm calmness that contrasted sharply with his new polished appearance. He offered his arm with effortless poise and told her she looked beautiful. Lily hesitated before taking it, aware that the fabric beneath her fingertips was far too fine for someone who claimed to live an ordinary life. They walked to the waiting car, a sleek black vehicle with a private driver. Lily stopped short. She stared at the gleaming door handle, struggling to reconcile the man beside her with the one she had believed him to be. Nathan noticed her hesitation and gently guided her inside with a reassuring touch. As the door closed behind them, sealing them into the luxurious interior, she felt herself drifting between awe and disbelief. The ride to the Cole estate was silent at first, filled with unspoken questions and the quiet hum of the engine. Lily found herself studying him when she thought he was not looking, tracing the lines of his profile and wondering what truths she had missed. Eventually, Nathan turned toward her, his expression softening. He told her there was nothing to fear, that he would not let her face this alone. The sincerity in his voice settled her more effectively than any rehearsed comfort could have. As the estate came into view, sprawling and majestic against the clear morning sky, Lily felt her pulse climb. Nathan placed his hand over hers with calm reassurance, and in that moment, she understood something vital. Whoever Nathan truly was, whatever world he belonged to, he had stepped into hers without hesitation. And today, he would stand beside her as her husband, even if only for a few borrowed hours. The Cole wedding unfolded like a scene carved from a world Lily Carter had only ever glimpsed from a distance. The estate lawn was a sweep of flawless emerald, dotted with white canopies and crystal chandeliers suspended from towering oaks. Soft music drifted through the air, mingling with the faint scent of roses and champagne. Guests in tailored suits and couture dresses moved as if they belonged to a different universe, one that operated on inherited confidence and unspoken privilege. Lily stepped out of the car on unsteady legs, her pulse a frantic beat beneath her skin. Nathan Blackwood offered his hand, and she took it because she needed an anchor. The moment he placed his palm at the small of her back, a warm, steady pressure, she felt her breath return. It was an oddly intimate gesture, one that sent a quick flutter along her spine. She reminded herself that it was part of the act, part of the role she had begged him to play, nothing more. But it felt like more. Nathan moved through the crowd with an ease that bordered on regal grace. Guests turned to look at him, their eyes lingering on the confident set of his shoulders, the quiet command in his posture. He introduced himself as Lily's husband, and every time he said the word husband, the air around her seemed to shift. His voice was low, touched with an affection so convincingly sincere, it made her chest tighten with something dangerously close to longing. He stayed close, too close. When she reached for a drink, he was already offering her one. When she shifted her weight, his hand adjusted on her back to balance her. When a cluster of guests approached, he leaned down to whisper observations that made her laugh in spite of her nerves. For fleeting moments, she forgot she was playing a part. For fleeting moments, she forgot why she had brought him here at all. Her ex-boyfriend Mark Anderson noticed them almost immediately. Lily saw the exact second recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by disbelief and something darker. His gaze flicked from Nathan's hand on her waist to the way she leaned ever so slightly toward him, then back to Nathan's impossibly confident expression. For the first time since the breakup, Lily felt the exquisite sting of victory. Not petty revenge. Not triumph rooted in spite. Something deeper. Something that whispered that she had not been the one left behind. She had simply outgrown him. Still, the illusion was fragile. When Mark approached them with a tight smile that did not reach his eyes, Lily felt her throat constrict. Nathan sensed it instantly. His arm tightened around her waist, pulling her subtly closer. The gesture was protective, firm, and unmistakably possessive. Mark faltered, his words stumbled. Nathan's calm gaze did not waver. The moment passed, but its intensity lingered like heat from a struck match. Later, under strings of warm lights, a man approached Nathan with a booming laugh and an expression of recognition. Lily watched as the color drained from Nathan's face for a fleeting heartbeat before he recovered. The guest called him by a name Lily did not know, a name that carried weight and authority. Blackwood. The world tilted, her heartbeat stumbled. That name belonged to the empire she worked for. The man at her side was not just playing the part of a husband, He was the heir to the empire that signed her paychecks. Nathan Blackwood was her boss, and suddenly nothing felt like a game anymore. The reveal shattered Lily Carter's composure with the force of a physical blow. One moment she was standing beside the man she believed to be a kind, unassuming stranger who had stepped into a whirlwind for her sake. The next, she was staring at Nathan Blackwood, heir to the Blackwood Hospitality Group, a name that commanded entire skylines and luxury empires. A name printed at the top of her pay stub every 2 weeks. A name that reshaped everything she thought she knew. The world around her dimmed, the sound of clinking glasses and polite laughter fading into a distant hum. Nathan's hand remained at her waist, steady and warm, but she felt suddenly cold. As if the ground beneath her had shifted and she was scrambling to stay upright. She turned her head slowly and met his eyes. The easy warmth she cherished was still there, but now it was framed by something else. Something like guilt, something like fear. He leaned slightly toward her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. He admitted that he had left out a few details about his day job. The understatement was almost absurd in its gentleness, and she might have laughed if her heart weren't pounding so violently. She whispered his last name back to him, as if testing it on her tongue, and he gave her a soft, apologetic smile that only made her stomach twist more tightly. Everything she knew about him, every kindness he had shown, suddenly existed in a fog of uncertainty. Was he amused? Was he merely indulging in her desperate request? Had she been a novelty, a momentary distraction for a billionaire accustomed to playing roles far more complex than the one she had asked of him? The rest of the evening passed in a surreal haze. Nathan stayed close, attentive as always, but she felt the hollowness inside her widening. Every glance from the guests felt heavier now, every whispered conversation sharper. The world she had tried so hard to escape for one night had become infinitely more suffocating. By the time she slipped into the back seat of the car with Nathan beside her, her limbs were trembling with exhaustion and mortification. She stared out the window as the estate lights faded behind them. Nathan did not attempt to touch her, though his presence filled the car like a warm tide she no longer trusted herself to lean into. When he walked her to her apartment door, she could barely look at him. She managed a strained goodnight, though her voice cracked on the last syllable. He hesitated before stepping back, his gaze lingering on her face with an unreadable expression that made her chest ache. Inside her apartment, the silence felt vast. The lavender scent that usually calmed her now seemed sharp and mocking. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. She had brought her billionaire boss to a wedding and asked him to pretend to be her husband. She had confessed her insecurities to him. She had leaned into him, trusted him, and she had not known him at all. Yet beneath the spiraling shame, a tiny ember of something unsettling remained. Despite everything she had learned, one truth echoed through her chest with dangerous clarity. The man she had fallen for was not the billionaire. It was the version of him she had met before the truth came crashing down, and she no longer knew which version was real. The morning sun filtered weakly through Lily Carter's curtains, casting pale stripes across the floor, but it did nothing to lighten the crushing weight in her chest. She moved through her apartment in a fog, her mind replaying the humiliating sequence of events in relentless loops. Every memory of Nathan Blackwood's smile now felt like a blade turned inward. She remembered the warmth of his hand on her back, the steady comfort in his voice, and the quiet moments when he had looked at her as if she were the only person in the room. All of it now felt tainted, reshaped by the revelation of his identity. She drafted her resignation letter 3 times, each version more desperate and self-effacing than the last. She could not stay at the company after what she had done. She could not face him after the foolishness she had spilled across the wedding like an open wound. Her fingers hovered over the send button, trembling. Before she could gather the resolve to press it, a sharp knock shattered the silence. Her breath stalled. No one visited her this early. No one visited her at all. When she peered through the peephole, her heart jerked violently. Nathan Blackwood stood on her worn welcome mat, once again dressed in casual clothes that somehow still whispered luxury. In his hands were 2 large coffees, steam curling gently from their lids. He looked so calm, so impossibly self-assured, that for a moment she felt the surreal urge to slam the door and pretend the universe had not twisted itself into a knot around them. She opened the door because she had no strength left for pretense. He greeted her simply and stepped inside with a quiet confidence that filled her tiny space. He placed the coffees on the counter and glanced around her apartment, his gaze lingering on her mismatched mugs and overstuffed bookshelves. She blurted out the only words she could manage. He was her boss. He had let her drag him into this absurd charade. Why? He met her accusation with a soft laugh that sent an unwelcome warmth through her chest. He confessed that it had been the most entertaining evening he had experienced in years. That seeing her ex unravel had brought him far more satisfaction than any boardroom victory. Despite her humiliation, a reluctant spark of amusement flickered through her. Then his expression shifted. Something raw surfaced, a quiet frustration edged with vulnerability. He told her about his mother, the matriarch who orchestrated his life with the precision of a general, pushing him toward alliances disguised as marriages. He spoke of socialites paraded before him like acquisitions, of suffocating expectations, of a life that looked gilded from the outside but felt claustrophobic within. When he stepped closer, the air between them tightened. There was no arrogance in his voice, only a charged certainty that made her pulse race. He told her he had a proposal. She had needed a husband for a night. He, as it happened, needed a wife for one weekend. His parents' anniversary was coming. He wanted her to play the part. Not to please them, but to disrupt the quiet tyranny he lived under. He offered her freedom from her debt, a year of breathing room, a chance to reclaim her life. As he stood before her, close enough that she could see the golden flecks in his blue eyes, Lily understood something terrifying. He was not manipulating her. He was inviting her into the only rebellion he could afford. Her answer escaped her before she even realized she had spoken. A single, trembling nod. And with it, the dangerous game began anew. The next 2 weeks twisted Lily Carter's world into something both exhilarating and deeply unsettling. What began as a desperate bargain evolved into a strange rhythm that felt dangerously close to normal. Each evening, Nathan Blackwood arrived at her apartment with an ease that defied the boundaries they were supposed to maintain. He carried takeout bags from hidden gem restaurants she had never heard of and insisted they learn the tiny details that any believable couple would know. Their favorite meals, their petty disagreements, the stories behind the clutter in her apartment and the oddities tucked into his structured life. He settled onto her lumpy couch as if it were a leather chaise in one of his penthouses, stretching out with relaxed confidence while she tried to ignore the tightening in her chest whenever he laughed. They watched old black and white movies, trading quiet comments in the dark. They shared popcorn. They memorized each other's habits. They rehearsed their story, but each practice session wove reality and fiction until neither of them could easily tell where the seams existed. Nathan told her things he had never told anyone. He confessed that he hated the sound of clinking champagne glasses because it reminded him of cold fundraisers where people talked but never listened. He said he sometimes envied the very employees who carried trays through his restaurants, people who ended their shifts and went home without entire empires resting on their shoulders. He admitted he often walked aimlessly through the city at night just to feel like a person instead of a brand. In return, Lily told him about the dream she had buried long ago. She described the small cafe and bookstore she imagined since childhood, a place where people lingered over novels and steaming mugs, a place that smelled like hope and quiet mornings. She told him about her mother's regrets and her own terror of repeating them. She told him that sometimes she felt so invisible at work she wondered whether her absence would be noticed at all. Nathan listened to every word. Truly listened. When she spoke, he leaned forward as if her sentences were precious. When she admitted fears, he softened in ways that made her heart ache. And then came the night everything changed. A soft rain fell outside her window, tapping against the glass like whispered confessions. They sat on her living room floor, surrounded by scattered takeout containers. The movie had ended long ago, but neither of them moved to restart it. Their conversation drifted into the fragile space where shadows made truths easier to speak. Nathan turned a beer bottle slowly between his fingers and said no one saw him. Not really. They saw the fortune, the name, the power. Never the man. His voice was stripped bare, revealing a loneliness that cut deeper than she expected. Lily whispered that she understood. She felt invisible too, reduced to her role rather than recognized for who she was. He lifted his gaze and met her eyes with a raw intensity that stole her breath. In the dim lamplight, the air between them thickened, charged with an emotion neither of them dared name. For one suspended second, the world narrowed to the space between their faces, a space pulsing with possibility. It was the moment where a story breaks its rails, where logic cracks, and where pretending becomes dangerously indistinguishable from truth. Nathan stood abruptly and walked to the door, as though fleeing the gravity pulling them together. With his hand on the knob, he paused, shoulders tense, as if battling himself. Lily whispered his name. He turned slightly, the hallway light outlining the sharp line of his jaw, but he did not step back inside. "Good night, Lily." And then he was gone, leaving her alone with the most terrifying realization of all. They were no longer acting. The morning they left for the Blackwood family estate in the Hamptons, Lily Carter felt the same sense of dread she imagined soldiers must feel before marching into battle. The car Nathan sent for her was sleek and silent, its interior filled with the faint scent of leather and something subtle she recognized as his cologne. He sat beside her, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, his profile sharp with a seriousness she had not seen before. Their earlier warmth had dissolved into something taut and electric. The air between them felt charged, not with anticipation, but with the weight of what remained unspoken after the night he walked away. Every bump of the road, every shift in the car's motion seemed to magnify the tension. She tried to steady her breath, but each inhale felt shallow. Nathan broke the silence first. He reached across the small expanse separating them and covered her hand with his. His touch was warm, grounding, and his thumb brushed her knuckles in a soft rhythm. He asked if she was ready. She answered with a shaky honesty, "No." His faint smile carried a mix of reassurance and something darker, a promise that he would not abandon her in the storm ahead. The estate revealed itself at the end of a long tree-lined drive, white columns rising against a flawless blue sky. It was not a house, but a proclamation of power. The fountain at the front entrance glittered like a jewel, and uniformed staff moved with practiced grace. Lily felt like someone had dropped her into a world built from a fantasy she had no right to touch. But Nathan's hand remained wrapped around hers as they stepped out, and his presence was a shield she clung to. Eleanor Blackwood, Nathan's mother, stood waiting at the door. Her posture was regal, her expression cool. She wore cream cashmere and diamonds that glimmered like frost. Her beauty was unmistakable, but it was the coldness in her blue eyes that struck Lily hardest. These were the same eyes Nathan had inherited, except his carried warmth and depth. Hers held calculation. She greeted her son with a controlled embrace. When her gaze shifted to Lily, it flicked over her with swift appraisal. Lily felt stripped bare by that single glance. Nathan introduced her as his wife. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. A subtle tightening around Eleanor's mouth betrayed her shock. Yet her voice remained smooth as she welcomed Lily, offering a hand that was cool and dry. She called her a surprise, her tone layered with meanings Lily could not unpack fast enough. Every syllable felt like a test she could not possibly pass. Inside, the mansion was a cathedral of old money. High ceilings, sweeping staircases, and corridors lined with art that belonged in museums. Lily stayed close to Nathan, her pulse pounding. She could feel Eleanor's eyes on her, observing, analyzing, judging. The weekend unfolded like a chess match. At meals, Eleanor's questions came sharp and polite, each one a blade disguised as curiosity. She asked about Lily's education, her family, her career. The subtext was clear. How does someone like you fit into this world? Nathan, to his credit, never left Lily defenseless. He responded for her, deflected, teased his mother, or reached under the table to give Lily's knee a reassuring squeeze. But the strain built slowly, weaving tension through every hour. By the second night, Eleanor abandoned subtlety. She asked Lily directly how she managed to capture her son's attention. A perfectly innocent question, embroidered with a cruel implication that echoed across the table. Lily's heart raced. The lie trembled. The facade wavered. Before she could speak, Nathan began a story. A detailed, romantic, breathtaking lie. He told the table he had met Lily in a dusty bookstore on a rainy afternoon. He described the way she looked lost in a novel, the exact shade of the afternoon light touching her hair, the title of the book she was reading. Every detail made the room fall silent. Every word was a confession hidden inside fiction. Lily stared at him, her heart aching with something she could no longer deny. The most beautiful lies were born from truth, and this one was tearing them both apart. The third day at the Blackwood estate began with sunlight pouring through gauzy curtains and the faint hum of distant waves, yet Lily Carter woke with a tightness coiling in her chest. Sleep had evaded her. Nathan's story from the night before replayed endlessly in her mind, each detail crafted with such tenderness that it felt less like a lie and more like a memory they had somehow lived together. She lay staring at the ornate ceiling, trying to steady her breath while the truth pressed against her ribs. Pretending was no longer safe. The lines were already blurring far faster than she could control. Nathan knocked on her door moments later and called her name softly. When she opened it, he stood with tousled hair and a tray balanced in his hands, carrying breakfast and a quiet smile that made her stomach twist. He stepped inside without waiting for invitation, placing the tray on a small table near the window. He told her he thought she needed a break from interrogations and strategic smiles. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to watch him, noticing the softness in his posture, the way his concern seemed unguarded and sincere. They talked while they ate, their conversation drifting between light teasing and moments heavy with unspoken truths. When she thanked him for defending her the night before, he brushed it off, saying that he merely told his mother what she needed to hear. But Lily caught the way he looked away when he said it, as though part of him was afraid she would see something deeper in his words. Something real. The morning might have remained peaceful if not for the arrival of Henry Covington, Nathan's childhood friend, and the man Eleanor had always hoped would guide her son back to the path she preferred. Henry arrived with an easy smile, tailored perfection, and eyes that glinted with curiosity the moment they settled on Lily. His greeting was warm, but she sensed a sharp intellect beneath the charm, an eagerness to identify fractures in the delicate story she and Nathan had constructed. At lunch, Henry asked subtle questions, threading suspicion through seemingly harmless conversation. He inquired about how Nathan and Lily met, prompting Nathan to retell the romantic bookstore story, but with slight new embellishments. Lily followed his lead, offering supportive details, her heart pounding as she tried to match the rhythm of his lie. Henry's smile held a hint of doubt that prickled Lily's skin. After the meal, Henry pulled Nathan aside, leaving Lily alone with Eleanor, whose silence felt like an oppressive tide. Eleanor finally spoke, remarking on Lily's composure, but questioning whether she understood the responsibilities and scrutiny that came with being part of their family. Her tone held neither kindness nor cruelty, only an unyielding expectation. Lily responded with quiet resolve, though her voice trembled. Eleanor's eyes sharpened, as though she had identified something she wasn't yet ready to name. Outside on the balcony, Lily found Nathan and Henry still talking, their voices low and tense. She paused just beyond view, her pulse quickening. Henry's tone was edged with concern and accusation. He told Nathan something was off, that this sudden marriage made no sense, that he had known Nathan his entire life and had never seen him act so impulsively. Lily heard her own name spoken with suspicion. She stepped back quickly, her breath unsteady, as Nathan defended her with a fervor that sent a confusing warmth through her chest. Henry left soon after, but his presence lingered like a warning. When Nathan returned to Lily, she forced a smile, though her insides quivered. He asked if she was all right. She lied and said yes. He studied her for a moment, almost as if he could sense the truth beneath her veneer. The cracks in their illusion were widening. Too many eyes, too many questions, Too many moments where truth and falsehood tangled until they were indistinguishable. As evening settled in and the house grew quiet, Lily faced the growing truth with a sinking heart. They were not just pretending for Nathan's family anymore, they were pretending for each other. The storm arrived in the late afternoon, rolling in from the coastline with a force that shook the windows of the Blackwood estate. Heavy clouds swallowed the sun, turning the sky into a churning mass of gray. Lily Carter stood at the tall windows of the east parlor, watching waves crash violently against the rocks. Her reflection in the glass looked tense, fragile, like a woman bracing for impact. Nathan entered silently behind her. She felt him before she heard him, the air shifting with the familiar warmth of his presence. When she turned, his expression held a seriousness she had not seen since the night he first appeared at her apartment with coffee and a reckless proposition. He asked if she was all right. It was the same question he kept asking, as though repetition might make the truth easier to face. She said she was fine. He stepped closer, calling out the lie with nothing but the softness in his eyes. The tension that had simmered for days thickened between them. She finally confessed that Eleanor's scrutiny felt suffocating and Henry's suspicion felt even worse. Nathan moved to reassure her, but she stepped back, words tightening in her throat. She asked him why he told the story of the bookstore with such conviction, why every detail felt like something he wished were real, why he looked at her the way he did when no one else was watching. Nathan froze, a muscle jumping in his jaw. The silence stretched, thick and trembling. He turned his face slightly, as though choosing his next words carefully, too carefully. He admitted that the story had made more sense than the truth. A pause. Then he added that he had never met anyone quite like her, and had not known how to say it without complicating everything. Lily's chest tightened. She wanted clarity, not riddles. She demanded to know what she was to him, a partner in deception, a convenient shield, or something he still refused to name. Before he could answer, Eleanor appeared in the doorway. Her presence shifted the air instantly. She dismissed Nathan with a tilt of her chin, requesting a private moment with Lily. He hesitated, his gaze flickering between them, then reluctantly stepped out. Eleanor approached with slow, deliberate grace, her eyes as sharp as cold steel. She said she could see through most illusions people tried to present to her, and Lily's, she claimed, was unraveling faster than she could repair it. She questioned Lily's intentions, her sudden appearance, the implausible whirlwind marriage. She called the relationship impulsive at best and opportunistic at worst. Something inside Lily snapped, not loudly, but with a quiet ache that felt irrevocable. She defended herself with trembling resolve, insisting she had no ulterior motives, no scheme, no desire for their wealth. Eleanor listened with the stillness of a predator observing prey. Then she leaned in, her voice low, and delivered the blow Lily never saw coming. She claimed Nathan had always rebelled when cornered, that he often gravitated toward the things he could not have or should not pursue, that Lily was simply the newest rebellion, a fleeting spark he would extinguish once the thrill faded. Eleanor insisted she was protecting her son, not attacking Lily. The words pierced deep, embedding themselves like splinters beneath Lily's skin. When Eleanor left the room, the silence closed in around her. She remained standing by the window until her knees trembled. The storm outside raged, its fury matching the turmoil inside her chest. She could not breathe. She could not think. She felt like a fragile ornament placed in a world built of marble and ice. Nathan returned, his voice threaded with worry, but Lily could no longer meet his eyes. She moved past him with a quiet apology he did not understand. She retreated to the guest room, closed the door, and finally let the tears fall with the force of the storm. For the first time since this charade began, she understood something devastating. The danger was no longer the lie they told everyone else. The danger was the truth she was afraid to tell herself. Night settled over the Blackwood estate with a heavy stillness, the remnants of the storm clinging to the windows in beaded trails. Lily Carter lay awake on the guest room bed, staring at the ornate ceiling, her chest aching with the weight of Eleanor's words and her own spiraling doubts. Every breath felt tight, every memory of Nathan pressed unbearably close. She could not stay here another minute. Not like this. Not with her heart pulled taut between fear and wanting. She quietly slipped from the bed, gathering her small suitcase. The house was silent, its luxurious corridors stretching before her like an echo of all the ways she did not belong. She moved without turning on lights, guided only by the faint glow of moonlight filtering through tall windows. Her footsteps were soft, but her heartbeat was thunder. She reached the top of the grand staircase just as Nathan appeared at the bottom, his figure emerging from the shadows with the kind of timing that felt almost fated. He froze when he saw her suitcase. The look on his face gutted her: confusion, hurt, and something darker, something she had never seen so nakedly before. He asked where she was going. His voice was quiet, deeply steady, but his eyes betrayed him. They held fear. She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. When she finally forced them out, her voice cracked. She said she needed to leave because staying here felt like drowning, because she could not keep pretending everything was simple when nothing about this was simple anymore. Nathan climbed the stairs slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. He asked if his mother had said something. She shook her head, though both of them knew it was a lie. He reached the step below hers, looking up at her with raw intensity. He said Eleanor was wrong. He said his mother was often wrong. He said Lily was not a rebellion, not a whim, not a mistake he would regret. Each declaration landed with a force she tried desperately not to absorb. But she needed more than denial. She needed truth. So she asked him the question she had been avoiding for weeks. What was she to him? What did he want from her beyond this pretend marriage? Beyond the bargain they had struck? Beyond the story they built together like a fragile house of cards? Nathan exhaled slowly, the truth written in every line of his face. He admitted that he had not expected her. He had not expected her quiet strength, or her selflessness, or the way she made him feel seen in a world where he was surrounded by people who only wanted pieces of him. He confessed that the lie had never been the problem. The problem was how quickly it stopped feeling like one. Lily's chest tightened painfully. She told him that wanting something real was dangerous when everything between them was born from a facade. She said she was terrified that the moment they returned to their regular lives, he would slip back into the world she could never be part of. She said she feared she was falling for a man whose world would swallow her whole. He stepped onto the same stair as her, now standing close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. His voice dropped to a low, fervent whisper. He said he did not care about his world. He cared about her, that he wanted the truth to be real, that he wished he had met her in a bookstore on a rainy afternoon because he would have fallen for her just as quickly. Her resolve trembled. She stepped back, torn between reaching for him and running. Nathan reached for her hand gently, not claiming, not demanding, simply offering. He told her that if she walked out of the estate tonight, he would not stop her. But he asked her not to leave because of fear. He asked her to stay because he believed they had already crossed the line between pretense and something far more dangerous and beautiful. Lily stood suspended on the staircase, caught between the world she knew and the world he was offering. Her suitcase dropped softly to the floor, and for the first time since this all began, she let herself breathe. Morning arrived with a brittle calm that felt like the fragile silence after a battlefield. The storm clouds had cleared, leaving a pale gold glow stretching across the Blackwood estate. Lily Carter sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, still wrapped in uncertainty. Her suitcase remained where it had fallen on the staircase the night before, a silent witness to the moment her resolve shattered under the weight of truth. She could not forget Nathan's confession or the intensity in his voice when he asked her to stay. It echoed through her like a promise and a warning. When she stepped into the hallway, she found Nathan waiting outside her door as though he had been standing there for hours. He looked exhausted, like a man who had fought too many battles in too few nights. But when he saw her, a quiet relief softened his expression. He asked softly if she slept. She nodded, even though she had barely closed her eyes. He asked if she still wanted to stay. This time, her reply came without hesitation. Yes. Nathan reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together with a tenderness that felt dangerous in its certainty. Before he could pull her into an embrace, footsteps echoed down the hall. Eleanor Blackwood appeared, sharp and elegant as always, but her expression was carved from ice. Her gaze fell to their joined hands, and something cold flickered across her face. She asked to speak with her son privately. Nathan refused. He said anything she wished to say could be said in front of Lily. The tension between mother and son crackled like static. Eleanor's voice remained composed, but her words hit with precision. She reminded Nathan of the importance of the family legacy, of the responsibilities he carried, of the expectations he had been raised to uphold. She insisted Lily was not prepared for their world. She accused him of acting recklessly, clouded by emotion rather than reason. She insisted that marrying Lily would destroy the equilibrium he had spent years maintaining. Nathan stepped forward, placing himself between Lily and the force of his mother's criticism. He spoke with a calm strength that stunned Lily. He said he was no longer willing to live a life curated by anyone else. He said he would decide who stood beside him, not out of rebellion, but out of choice. Eleanor's jaw tightened, the threat of a fracture rippling beneath the surface of her composure. Then she delivered the blow. If Nathan continued down this path, she would withdraw her support from several major projects in the company. She would make it clear to the board that his judgment was compromised. The consequences hung in the air like a guillotine. Something inside Lily broke. She stepped forward and gently slipped her hand from Nathan's. She told Eleanor she understood. She told Nathan she did not want to be the reason he lost everything he had built. She said she could walk away if it protected him. Her voice trembled, but her resolve stayed steady. She tried to smile, but it faltered under the ache in her chest. Nathan looked at her as though she had just cut open the sky. He reached for her, his voice fraying as he told her to stop. He said she did not get to decide for him. He said the company, the legacy, the boardroom battles meant nothing if he had to lose himself to keep them standing. Eleanor watched with a complicated emotion Lily could not decipher. Frustration, fear, perhaps even a glimmer of recognition at the strength of the bond forming between them. The silence stretched. Finally, Nathan said something that silenced the entire hallway. He told his mother that if she forced him to choose, the company would lose, not him. Eleanor stiffened, shock rippling across her flawless composure. She stared at him for a long moment, weighing the seriousness in his voice, the unwavering certainty in his eyes. For the first time since Lily had met her, Eleanor seemed genuinely uncertain. Without a word, she turned and walked away. The moment she disappeared around the corner, Nathan pulled Lily into his arms, holding her with a fierce desperation that stole her breath. She felt the tremor in his hands, the relief and fear entwined in his embrace. He whispered that she was worth the fight, that she had never been a mistake, that he was done choosing anything over his own happiness. Lily held him, her heart full and aching. For the first time, choosing each other came with a cost. And for the first time, neither of them hesitated to pay it. The final morning at the Blackwood estate arrived with an unexpected softness. The tension that had gripped the house like a relentless fist had loosened, replaced by a quiet stillness that felt like the first breath after a long storm. Light poured through the tall windows in warm ribbons, and somewhere beyond the gardens, birds began to sing as if announcing the beginning of something new. Lily Carter walked slowly down the grand staircase, her fingers grazing the smooth railing. She felt different today, steadier, as though the emotional battles of the past days had forged something stronger within her. When she reached the bottom step, she found Eleanor Blackwood waiting in the foyer. The older woman stood with flawless posture, her hands folded neatly in front of her, but her expression was not the icy mask Lily had grown accustomed to. There was something contemplative behind her eyes, something almost human. Eleanor greeted Lily with a measured nod. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eleanor surprised her. She said Nathan was his own man and would make his own choices, whether she approved or not. She admitted, in her own rigid way, that Lily had shown strength she had not expected. She did not offer acceptance, but she offered acknowledgement. And from Eleanor Blackwood, that was a gift of rare value. Lily thanked her quietly, sensing the shift but not presuming more than what was being offered. Outside, Nathan was waiting by the car with their luggage already loaded. When he saw Lily, his entire face changed, softening with a warmth that made her chest tighten. He walked toward her with slow, deliberate steps, his eyes never leaving hers. He asked if she was ready to go home. She answered with a small smile and said she finally was. As they drove away from the estate, the weight of the past days seemed to fall behind them on the winding road. The ocean glittered in the distance, peaceful now, as though the storm had never existed. Nathan rested his hand on the console between them, palm up, waiting. Lily placed her hand in his without hesitation, their fingers intertwined with the ease of something no longer fragile, but chosen. They talked during the drive, not about the company or Eleanor or the lies that had brought them together, but about small things. The books Lily loved, the hidden places in the city Nathan escaped to when he needed quiet. Their dreams for the future, cautiously at first, then with growing certainty. When Lily spoke of her dream to open a bookstore cafe, Nathan listened with tender focus. He said someday he wanted to build something with her, even if it was simply shelves and a bell above a door. She laughed softly, the sound freeing something deep within her. Back in the city, Nathan did not take her to her apartment. He took her to his. The penthouse was elegant yet warm, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. He led her inside as though he were welcoming her into a chapter he had waited his entire life to begin. She looked around, feeling both out of place and perfectly at home. Nathan watched her closely, as if memorizing her presence in his world. He told her the truth then, plainly and without hesitation. He wanted her, not as a shield, not as a favor, not as a temporary part of a complicated lie. He wanted her because she made him feel like a man instead of an heir. Because she challenged him. Because she saw him. Because he loved her. The words fell into the quiet room with a depth that stole her breath. Lily felt tears rise, not from fear, but from finally understanding that she had stopped being alone long before she realized it. She told him she loved him too, with a certainty that left no room for doubt. Nathan pulled her into his arms with gentleness threaded through fierce emotion. They stood in the golden light of the late morning, holding each other as the city hummed softly around them. Two lives no longer bound by pretense, but by a truth they had fought to claim. The lie had brought them together, but the truth was what would keep them.